Hello, good morning, and welcome to Nature Live Online from the Natural History Museum. I'm Khalil Thirlaway. If you're new to Nature Live, this is a series where we have conversations with guests from the museum and beyond, telling interesting stories from their work in all sorts of fields, from dinosaurs to DNA, volcanoes to vampire squid, and so much more. Today's show is a little bit special. Last month, we announced the winners of the 56th Annual Wildlife Photographer of the Year competition, and to celebrate the amazing photography in this year's exhibition, we're hosting a series of interviews with some of the photographers whose work is on display. The museum's currently closed to the public, but we're hoping to reopen as soon as it's safe to do so. In the meantime, you can head over to our website to check out some of the beautiful images from this year's competition. There's also still time to enter next year's competition, so if you've got some photos you want to share, head on over and submit your work before the 10th of December, which is just over 2 weeks from now if you're watching live. There's the adult competition for photographers aged 18 or over, and the Young Wildlife Photographer of the Year is open to anyone aged 17 or below. Both competitions are open to anyone, no matter where you live, whether you're a professional or amateur photographer. Now, before I introduce today's guest, let me say we also love hearing from you guys at home. So if you've got any questions or comments in today's show, please do pop them in the comments section and we'll try to get to as many as we can in the time we've got. If you are asking a question or making a comment about a specific photo from today's show, please do specify that in the comments because sometimes there's a little bit of a delay and we don't get them at the exact same time as you post them. My guest today is a wildlife photographer whose beautiful image of fireflies is highly commended in this year's competition, Aishwarya Sridhar. Hi, Aish. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Hi, Khalil. Greetings from India. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for joining us. I'm really looking forward to today's show. I love what WPY shows.
Oh, yes, same here. It's an honor and a privilege to be a part of this show.
So before we look at some of your beautiful work and kind of discuss that, let's give the audience a bit of an insight into you. So how did you get into wildlife photography?
So basically, I have been into wildlife from a very young age. I grew up in a place called Panvel, which is close to Mumbai city in India. And Panvel is a very green place. So as a child, I've spent my free time chasing butterflies and seeing fireflies at night in my balcony. So from an early age onwards, the love for wildlife definitely was there. And my dad is a member of Bombay Natural History Society. So he used to take me on these amazing treks to the nearby green places. And that's how with each trip to the outdoor and to the wilderness, my love for wildlife grew. And I think I was about 12 when I got my first camera as a birthday gift. And that became my favorite toy after that. And I think the moment which was probably the aha moment was when I saw my first tiger in the wild. And at that moment, I was like, this is it. I am completely and madly in love with wildlife.
I can imagine that must have been a really powerful moment. Seeing a tiger in the flesh, it must have been incredible.
Absolutely. It was as if, you're seeing a majestic and a powerful creature. And for the first time, and this male tiger was so beautiful. He came out of the grass and walked straight towards me. And I could actually look into his eyes. And it was as if I was seeing into his soul. And at that moment, I still remember that as if it was yesterday.
And obviously, this is one of your other images of tigers from later in your career. But before we start looking at these images in detail, why don't you give us a bit of an insight into your approach to wildlife photography?
So my approach is pretty simple when it comes to photographing wildlife. I like to tell stories of the species that I have in front of me. So from being from a country which is so biologically diverse when it comes to the point of, seeing the amount of ecosystems and the variety of biodiversity that we have in India. You take, for example, from the Himalayas, you have snow-capped mountains to tropical rainforests in southern India. of the Western Ghats. Then you have deserts in Rajasthan, and you have the coniferous forests in Northeast India. So you have like a variety of ecological habitats in just one country. So I really want to showcase the biodiversity of my country out to the world. And when I click images, I usually like to tell a story using the image. So, like for example, this particular image of these two tiger cubs playing, it captures the innocence of their childhood as well as the time when they're about sub-adults, and in a few months' time, they would likely be separating, and then obviously sibling rivalry would set in and who would be for the throne. So yeah, that is the kind of stories that I like to tell.
Oh, that's a beautiful moment in their story, I think, as well. Just like you said, it's kind of on the cusp of adulthood. So they're still very playful and kind of childlike, but they're very powerful animals. They're tigers, and when they're adults, they're going to be very ferocious. We've had a question from one of our viewers on YouTube asking, what are they fighting for?
Oh, they're actually play fighting. They're not fighting over anything. This it's like a very cute moment. So there was this tigress with her three cubs, and they were all sitting in a water actually. And this image was shot at Tadoba Amthari Tiger Reserve during the hot summers of April. And believe me, summer months in India get really hot, especially when in central India. So I was standing there all sweating, but obviously enjoying the moment because you had these mother and three cubs right in front of me. And out of the blue, suddenly these two decided they wanted to play. So they got up and they went to a nearby mud bank, and they just began fighting and slapping each other. And this moment, if you look at a little more in detail, you can see that the tiger on the right is actually slapping the tiger on the left. So it's a very humorous moment as well.
That's I think that's my favorite detail of this image is that hand. It that paw.
Yeah.
It looks so much like a hand in this photo because it's
Yeah.
the digits are separated, and it does look like a slap.
Yeah. In reality, it was a slap, but it was a very cute one.
It is an adorable image. And was it scary being around an adult tiger and her cubs?
Oh, not at all. I have absolutely no fear when it comes to big cats. I love spending time with big cats, documenting their stories, because I feel that they are one of the most majestic creatures on our planet. And they have like absolutely so much of moments in their life. When you go and spend time with a tiger, there's absolutely no dull moment.
It must be amazing to be so close to such a powerful organism and seeing it in its natural environment. And moving on to another cat, actually, we've got another image that I'd like to talk about, which is this one. So, tigers are something that people from outside of India will often associate with India, but they might not immediately think lions.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, India is the one of the prime habitats for Asiatic lions, and they're found in Gujarat. So I was there in the winters a few years back, and there was this couple of a male and a female lioness, and they were actually in the process of courtship. And that's when this image was clicked, and the female was pretty angry with the male, and you can see real aggression in this image.
Yeah, big cat mating doesn't tend to be the friendliest of mating in the
Yeah.
animal kingdom.
Yes, and you can also say like they are pretty loud. Yeah.
So is that how you find them? By listening for the noise?
We actually spotted them. So we were on our route when we heard alarm calls, and we stopped, and then we saw this pair, the male and female, emerge out of the bushes, and then they like began to mate out in the open, and that was pretty scary. And at the same time, it was also a very, what can you say, adventurous moment.
Yeah, and it must be amazing to see kind of the next generation of lions kind of starting to come into existence.
Yes.
I was it seeing them at this kind of vulnerable and intimate moment, was that, I don't know, how was that different from seeing them kind of uh, in the rest of their kind of day?
It's obviously very special when you get to see such moments because they're very uncommon in the wild. And especially when you look at Asiatic lions, they are a social cat when it comes to like other big cats. The lions are, they have a social structure. They live in a pride compared to a tiger or a leopard who are solitary creatures. And when we normally think of big cats, we see them as these carnivores who are very ferocious and very raw, but they also have a gentler side to them, and seeing them at such vulnerable moments actually brings out that gentle side.
It's really lovely to see that kind of tenderness, like, just like with the previous image as well. You're seeing that tender side of an animal that's often considered to be kind of big and scary and predatory. And actually, one of our viewers has asked about kind of your work with big cats, and has asked, have you ever had a moment when a big cat takes a little bit too much interest? And so, what kind of distance do you keep? How do you stay safe?
So basically, in India, you're on safari. So you're in a safari vehicle when you go on a tiger safari, or for that matter, to see lions or leopards. But there was this one moment when I think I was in southern India and at in the Annamalai Tiger Reserve, and it was at night. And I was actually out there to photograph the lion-tailed macaque. And after dinner, we were walking back to the cottage when we heard alarm calls. And the guide who was with me, he told me that this area is frequented by leopards. So we got a little bit cautious, and we were like waiting to see if there was any movement around. And the sambar alarm call kept on going. And at one point I also started doubting, is it for us or is it for really a big cat? Because generally, if you look at the way sambar alarm call is, they are normally very, very accurate when it comes to spotting big cats, compared to the spotted deer alarm call or the langur. And I was like very tense as well, because I was on foot for the first time, and there's this I don't know if it's a leopard or a tiger out there. And we were waiting, but nothing happened. Then we went back to our cottage. The next day, when I came back and I checked that area, I found fresh pug marks. Possibly from the night, and they were of a leopard. So the leopard did spot us, but I couldn't see the leopard. So that's how close I have got to a big cat. When it comes to safaris, sometimes I have had the distance of like 3 to 4 feet from the vehicle, and like really close moments, but thoroughly enjoyable.
It's amazing that you kind of have that kind of reading of the prey animals and their calls and stuff. And I find it really interesting that some of them are more accurate than others. Like, some are more reliable sources.
Yes.
So what are some of the more or less reliable prey animals out there in terms of their alarm calls?
So you have like the peacock, which also gives alarm calls. Like you have spotted deer, then you have the samba deer, and then you have the langur, the Hanuman langur. So when it comes to like leopards, langur alarm call is very accurate, but the only like non-accurate sometimes is the peacock and the chital and the spotted deer, in fact. So they can actually give alarm calls looking at humans sometimes. So, and when you're in a safari gypsy and you go too close to them, sometimes they can give alarm calls, and you would like mistake that to be the presence of a predator nearby.
That's fascinating. And we've got a question from one of our viewers, Kieran, on YouTube, who's asking about kind of your methods. And it's asking, what sort of equipment is best for this kind of ground level photography of big animals?
So what I use is, I have a DSLR. I use a Canon 1DX Mark II, and for clicking larger animals, I use a 600 prime lens, and I have a good tripod, so I can like really push it to the ground level when I shoot. And even when I am on a safari gypsy, I usually like to remove the middle seat so that I have leeway to stretch the tripod in whichever angle I want to. And then when I can like really get on the base of the safari like vehicle, I can put the tripod there and I can click them at ground level.
It's fascinating how looking kind of behind the camera, not just at the story around the picture, but what it takes to get that image. And
Yeah.
moving on from big cats, I've got one of my favorite images that you sent me is this image of flamingos,
Oh,
which I think, yeah, here we go. Um, I love just the kind of the horizontal kind of stripes in the image. If you kind of blur your eyes, you've got that
yes.
blue, white, pink, black, green, and the kind of the movement as well.
So yeah, absolutely, and thank you so much that you like this image so much. This is actually I clicked this at sea. So I was on a boat, and it was really rocky, and I didn't know like whether it would be a stable shot or not because you're going like this on the boat, and the flamingos are flying, and you need to like absolutely freeze the moment. And yeah, clicking flamingos is like an absolute pleasure. They are one of the most beautiful and the most colorful of birds out here. And Mumbai sees a lot of flamingos visiting during the winters and the summer months. So you have them at inland wetlands and you have them at sea also. So I clicked this particular shot at sea when I was on a boat.
And I love flamingos because they're a weird mix of kind of graceful and goofy.
Yes.
Sometimes they can be so kind of almost like dancing, kind of, when they do that kind of group movement around and stuff. But
Oh,
sometimes they just look so gangly and out of place.
yeah. Absolutely, and you should see the moment when they actually do that train like thing of dancing and that amazing footwork that they put on display. And I've been lucky to see that and to be able to capture that on video.
Ah, gorgeous. Ah, I wish we had that to show. We've got a question from Carrie, one of our viewers, asking, "What's your favorite animal to photograph?"
Oh, that's a very difficult question, Carrie, because I love photographing like any animal. It's not just big cats, although I do have a soft corner for big cats. But be it birds, be it mammals, be it tiny insects, be it invertebrates. One genre of photography I would really love to explore is underwater, though I haven't got a chance yet. So there's absolutely like no one favorite animal as such. But if you like really ask me to that I have to pick, then I would probably go with big cats.
I mean, they are such charismatic animals. You can see the attraction there. But I'm
Yes.
really glad that we've got quite a you sent over quite a range of photos of different organisms. So I'm glad that we're going to get to explore quite a few of those today. And I think our next image we've got to show, as far as I remember, is another bird, but I might be wrong. Yes,
Oh, yes.
I love the colors in this one.
It's one of the most colorful birds that you can spot in India.
So what is this
And
bird?
it's an oriental dwarf kingfisher, and it's also called the flying rainbow because it's
For
literally
obvious
like made
reasons.
up of the rainbow colors. And you normally see them during monsoons, and they build these nests on mud banks. So this was actually during the nesting season that I captured them, and the bird is going to feed its chicks, which is inside the nest. So,
What's it got there? Is
it,
that a mantis?
yeah, it is a mantis. But
It,
I'm not sure like which species of mantis it is, but it is a mantis.
it seems unfortunate for such a strong predator as a mantis to then become food for something else,
That's nature, right?
right? So, kind of, what's the story behind this image?
This so I was like in this image is captured like pretty close to my home in Panvel at Karnala Bird Sanctuary. So every year you have these oriental dwarf kingfishers building nests on the mud bags there, and I have been chasing this bird for the last 6 years, and I haven't got one single shot of it until like last year. So last year was like I broke the jinx, and I finally was able to capture it on camera. And this particular situation was really tough to shoot because I had to like hike with all my equipment for a really long time to capture them, and then sit in a hide and wait for them during monsoon. So you definitely have that fear of risking your equipment getting wet. And but fine, thankfully the whole shoot panned out pretty well, and I could get some fantastic videos and photographs of this bird feeding the chicks with different prey. So you're seeing here is a mantis. I also got it with a couple of lizards, with geckos, and it was pretty awesome.
That's incredible, and it's really fascinating to hear about that kind of risk versus reward thing that you have to do in your
Yeah.
head. It's like, oh, my equipment might get damaged, but is it worth it for this shot? It's amazing what's come out of it. And we've got another question from one of our viewers, Wendy, who has asked, and I guess this feeds into the kind of risk reward side of things. Do you make your living from your photography, or is it a kind of just a side passion?
So I actually make my living through wildlife filmmaking and presenting, but photography is like a hobby, come also a part of the whole work, because I do also sell my images for print. So yeah, it's a mixture.
And on the subject of your wildlife filmmaking, Kieran on YouTube has asked, have you got any kind of new documentaries in the works? Or you've got any projects coming?
Oh yes, there is a documentary which is coming up for release next year very soon, and I would definitely be updating about the release very very soon. As of now, I'm bound by contract, so I can't talk much about it. But yeah, zip. But you can follow me on my website, on my Instagram, and I will definitely be posting the release date very soon.
All right, I can't wait to hear what that's about. So
I will definitely inform you, Khalil. You'll be the first to know.
Thank you. I can't remember what the next image in the slideshow is, so we'll have to see what comes up. It's gonna be, I mean, oh, this is another of my favorites. I love this, the way this is framed. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, this is from my own garden, and it was monsoons, and and during lockdown, and I didn't know like what to shoot, because obviously during lockdown I can't go out. So I was like searching in my garden. I was like up and down, and finally I found this caterpillar munching away to bliss on this leaf, and when I looked closer, I noticed that it had carved out a shape which looked similar to what its looks are in the leaf. And I waited patiently till it actually fitted that frame, and I framed the caterpillar within its own eating shape, whatever you call it. so it's like a frame within a frame.
Yeah, it worked so well, and it's amazing that the kind of the patience that a lot of wildlife photography takes. And I from the viewer side of things, we just see the final image that you choose to share, but in behind all of these images there's probably lots of different images that you've taken and trying to pick the best one, and you've had to wait in your garden for ages for a caterpillar to crawl into the right position, or you've had to trek across, hunt a bird for 6 years and then trek across monsoon to get it. So what's that like, having to kind of wait and be patient for the right moment?
It's amazing, because one thing that nature teaches you, and especially wildlife photography teaches you, is patience. You have to, like, sometimes, like you said, you have to wait for hours, if not days, to get that perfect shot. And even after waiting, sometimes you end up not getting it, or you end up messing it up on field. So that also you run the risk. So
how do you deal with that frustration if you've kind of been waiting for a shot for so long, and then you look at your camera afterwards and you realize that you messed it up?
Oh, it is pretty frustrating, trust me. Very frustrating.
And going back to this particular image, one thing I really love about this is how it shows the different types of legs that caterpillars have. So insects have 6 legs, 3 pairs of legs, but caterpillars have those 3 sets of legs at the front, which is on the right hand side of this image, which are true legs, and then you have the kind of the false legs, the kind of quasi legs at the back. And it's only with images like this where you get to actually see that up close.
Yes, absolutely. So even if you look closely at the false legs, they are actually not. They don't have those pincer points as such. So they move like a like, they're like little jelly like structures if you touch them. And this fellow was a really bold fellow. He showed me like some amazing shots I could frame with him. He was out there and allowing me to frame him in all different possible angles, but I had to wait quite a lot to get this particular shot because he was eating the rest of the leaf and not coming to the position which he had actually carved out in the beginning.
Well, sometimes models can be uncooperative. You got to work with individual subjects.
And you can't even like ask them and direct them to come to the right position because they're wild animals. If it's a model, you can tell her like, light is not proper, come here, stand here, left profile, right profile. You can't do that to a wild animal. He
And
would take whatever.
on the subject of that, actually, how is there any way that you can encourage animals to be in certain places or behave certain ways, or is that something that you don't do?
No, I don't do that way. Yeah, you mean baiting, right?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, maybe baiting, or I'm not a wildlife photographer, so I don't know.
No, I haven't engaged in those practices till now.
I guess because the downside to doing that is that you're artificially interfering with this organism's
Yes.
behavior and environment, and kind of that can have kind of knock-on effects.
Yeah, and basically, I feel that I normally like prefer to capture them in their natural behavior without any artificial interference, and I feel that what comes out of that is a much bigger uh, a moment than what I would normally get by orchestrating it.
And especially because you mentioned earlier that for you an important part of it is the story behind the image.
Yes.
And if the story is I put some bait out and I took a picture of what came to the
Yeah.
bait, that's not a particularly that's
Interesting
not a
one.
rich story. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the results speak for themselves. They're wonderful, and I'd love to look at another image actually. Let's have a look at the next one. This one I think is kind of bittersweet because at first it kind of looks just like a monkey hanging out, but what's the story behind this one?
So I am working on a project actually documenting these bonnet macaques and rhesus macaques at Karnala Bird Sanctuary, which is pretty close to where I live. And when you look at Karnala, it was once a very beautiful, rich forest, but now it has a national highway going right across it, right through it rather. And they were expanding the national highway, and about 200 to 300 trees have been cut during that whole expansion project. And the bonnet macaques over there have been really affected because Karnala is not only a habitat for birds, but it also is a habitat for these primates and even for the Hanuman langur for that matter. So these bonnet macaques have absolutely been left homeless. And during one of my shoots, I noticed this baby macaque. It was trying to play on these steel rods that had been erected on the road shoulder. And instead of actually playing on trees, which it's actually meant to do that, it's using steel rods for playing and entertainment purposes. And that was really saddening and heartbreaking for me to see this moment. But the reason I captured it is because it conveys a very strong story. It tells you that instead of jumping on trees, it's now been reduced to have man-made structures as a plaything.
Yeah, and it really kind of highlights that interface between the kind of the human constructed world and nature and the
Yes,
impact that we might be having.
it highlights the conservation issue of deforestation and the fact that the amount of human interference that we put in the wild absolutely needs to be reduced.
And I love in this image itself the way that the kind of the steel rods
Yes.
almost kind of look like a forest, but a kind of a sad, bare metal
Yes,
forest.
exactly. It's more like a concrete jungle rather than a natural jungle.
Absolutely. And was this you said it was a baby monkey, so were there other members of its troop around?
Yes, its mother and its brother was a little away, which I didn't frame. I only captured this fellow because he was doing all sorts of antics on that rod, and it almost looked to me like he was pole dancing on it. I even captioned this pole dancing in my library.
Well, monkeys have these amazing complex behaviors. That
They're
is,
one of my favorite subjects to capture. Like the expressions that they give are so human-like.
I was going to say that actually. The look on this monkey's face doesn't exactly say I'm having a great time.
Yeah,
It says, "Really? This?"
this is all I get? Like
Yeah.
question mark.
And so going back to the topic of patience and the role that plays in your photography, I've had a question from one of our viewers on YouTube asking what the balance is between kind of patience and preparation. How important are each of those?
They're both very important because when you look at wildlife photography, you definitely need to prepare for it before going out there on the field. So, what I normally do is that I read up a little bit about the place and about the species that I am going to photograph. If I'm just visiting a sanctuary and I want to click every possible species, I would definitely read up on the place more than a particular species. But if I'm concentrating on, say, primates, or if I'm doing a big cat story, then I'd read up about their characteristics, about specific behavior, with something to look out for. Because many a times, especially in birds, if you're capturing them in flight, you need to know their movements, you need to understand them to know exactly when they're about to take off, and that's when you will be able to capture them in flight. Otherwise, what happens is that you end up missing that opportunity, and I've missed that a lot early on. And there have been so many moments when I've been waiting, and then at that last moment I somewhere turn my camera and the bird flies, and I'm like, oh damn, I missed it.
Well, I guess those kinds of mistakes and missed opportunities are really how you learn and how you grow
Exactly,
in any
yeah.
craft.
Absolutely.
So returning to the images, I think the next image is another monkey image, and this one again I think had a little bit of a kind of tenderness, but a slight like I don't know. I felt it had almost a kind of sadness to it because I don't know. It seems like that little kind of that little hand there just seems to be holding on for dear life.
Yes, you're very right. In fact, there is a sad element to this image because I was on the way to a place in Western Ghats when I noticed the hillside being set on fire, and a lot of langur monkeys were running for life. And when the smoke cleared, I noticed this baby literally clinging on to its mother for dear life. And the that moment when this whole scene was taking place, I really felt that bond that animals have, even between a mother and a baby in the animal world, it's as strong as it is in the human world. That love, that affection, that blind trust and faith.
It's amazing how all of that does come across in the image because you before you'd even told me the story just now of this image, that kind of sweetness and tenderness, but sadness and kind of desperation does come across really strongly in this image.
Yes, it does. And what really was striking in that moment for me is how that baby monkey, baby langur, was so like so with the mother. Like that bond was really inexplicable for me.
Yeah, it's a very very powerful kind of concept as well as kind of seeing it in real life.
Yeah, I didn't
Um,
want to frame like the whole monkey and the baby, so I only concentrated on the baby's hand.
yeah, and I think that's the part that really conveys the emotion in this image.
Yeah.
So I think we've probably got time for one more image, and then we'll kind of answer a few more questions that come in
Okay.
before the end of the show. So, well, other than this image, I was thinking of looking at your Wildlife Photographer of the Year image, which is absolutely stunning. And I think we'll be able to see it in a second. And I really want us to find out what came into this image. So what are we seeing here?
You're seeing fireflies at their best at night under the starlit sky at Bhandardara in Maharashtra. So I like normally love clicking big cats and mammals and all, but I definitely feel that there is a need to photograph lesser known species as well, because their stories need to be highlighted too. And fireflies have always fascinated me since childhood. I used to chase them in my balcony. So when the opportunity presented itself that I could capture them at Bhandardara, and which is a place where fireflies usually gather during monsoons, I went along gladly. So when you look at fireflies and the way they behave, they are active only during a very short window just before monsoons. So I think it's about a 2 week or a 3 week window at that point. And Bandadara, when I reached there, I think it was about 6:30 in the evening, and I met up with a couple of locals, and we chatted about which is the best place, which route to take in the forest, and they guided me and told me to take one particular nature trail, and that I would be blessed with a lot of fireflies. And I was really praying to God that it happens that way, and I went on this trail. They also did warn me about leopards, and I had to be careful at that point. And that was probably one trip where I really prayed to God that I did not come across a big cat, because normally I'm like, please show me a big cat. But this is the first time I was like, don't show me a big cat, because I was on foot and I didn't want to find.
Especially at
Didn't want to
night as well.
Yeah, at
Because
night,
at
and they
night,
are
you
active.
can't see, they definitely can.
Yes, absolutely. And I was like really praying that I should not come across a leopard over there, and thankfully I didn't. But I was walking for a couple of hours, seeing fireflies here and there, but not in the numbers that I expected them to be. And then finally this tree was there, like just right there, completely lit from top to bottom, as if some Christmas lightings had been strung on it. And I initially used a very tight frame of the tree with a telephoto zoom lens, and what result that I got was not very beautiful, like not what I had imagined in my mind. And I was wondering, like, what do I do to add that wow factor in this image? And I was looking around and I saw the sky lit with stars, and I was like, this is it. I will mix the stars in the sky and the stars on earth, which is fireflies. And I switched it to wide angle, and that's how this image was created. It's a stitch of 27 different images at 24-second exposure over a period of half an hour, and that's how I clicked this winning image. And then when I came back home, I processed it, and I was like, oh wow, this really looks like some magical world, as if I am not on earth.
Yeah, I think magical is definitely the word for it. It looks so, yeah, like otherworldly, and I'm really glad that you drew that kind of parallel between the stars and,
Yeah,
and the fireflies, because they seem so kind of complementary, but also so totally different, because one is this little insect here on Earth, and the other one is this huge thing millions and millions of miles away, but they look so beautiful together.
absolutely. And thank you so much that you like the image. And this is like, I am a big fan of Harry Potter and Percy Jackson. So for me, when I was standing there at that spot, it looked as if, I'm standing in a world of probably Avatar or Narnia, that kind of thing, where it looked completely otherworldly and not on planet Earth.
Well, you can see, I guess, where some of the inspiration comes for some of these kind of science fiction and fantasy worlds. And obviously the
Yes.
judges liked your photo as well.
I'm so glad. I'm so thankful they did.
So I think now we're coming towards the end of the show. So I'd really like to answer some more questions from our viewers before we go. Um, we've got another question from Carrie, who's said that her 10-year-old would like to know if while you've been taking pictures of wild animals, do any of them approach you in kind of curiosity, and what do the animals think of your presence?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Carrie, for that lovely question. Because a lot of times, especially primates, they love to explore you and they come really close to you. So, there was this bunch of lion-tailed macaques which I was shooting at the Western Ghats, and they are normally arboreal creatures and they rarely come on the ground. But spending some time with them, they got accustomed to my presence, and then this whole troop of them came down and they began exploring my camera, what I was clicking, coming so close that I had to actually switch from a telephoto lens to a super wide angle, and still I could frame a portrait of them.
That's lovely, and especially with, yeah, like you said, with primates, they're just so curious. Sometimes you hear stories of them kind of, stealing lens caps or taking the aerials off cars just because they want to kind of see what it is.
Yes, and they come so close. There have been incidences with me where, especially in Karnala, because the bonnet macaques are really friendly with humans as well due to increased human interference, they steal your food. There was this one point where I had left the car window open and I forgot about that and I was busy shooting, and this alpha male just came into my car. He has picked up my handbag and he is munching away in glory and happiness, and I was like left hungry that entire shoot. It was very funny at the end of it.
They're so resourceful. They're so cheeky. And I think a really good question to round up the show on. We've had a couple of our viewers asking quite similar questions. I'm going to pick one. One of our viewers on YouTube has asked, so photography is a wonderful tool for illustrating the current state of kind of wildlife diversity and stuff. But do you think that politicians are beginning to take biodiversity and conservation seriously enough, or is there still a long way to go? And a follow-up question to that as well is one of our other viewers has asked, how do you feel about the future of wildlife conservation in general? Are you optimistic or pessimistic, or what?
I'll answer the second question first. So, regarding my view, I feel that still a lot needs to be done in terms of wildlife conservation, but we are doing quite a lot. And when I look at the whole thing, I feel that possibly a few years down the line, if we don't act now, it might be too late, because we are staring at the sixth mass extinction. So it's high time that we wake up and do our bit now to protect whatever is left on Earth, because that's when our children and our grandchildren will see a more greener planet. Otherwise, you'd probably continue to be seeing more pandemics in the future. And coming to the point of politicians taking notice of our wildlife, some of them do, some of them don't. So it is like, 50-50. And what, like, I really feel that images have that power to wake up people who do not take notice of our wildlife, because when you show people images and you tell them the story, it strikes them much more than simply telling someone, a story of, or an incident of possibly a macaque losing its life to accident. But when you show a picture of a dead macaque lying on the road, that it really hits the person, and they are able to see and visualize that aspect, and then obviously it evokes emotions. So visual medium would probably play a major role in the future in influencing policies, and I really hope it does. And we should definitely be out there doing our bit and our best to protect our planet, because it's now or never.
I absolutely agree. And one thing that the Natural History Museum has been doing with the Wildlife Photographer of the Year exhibition is not just trying to kind of show it to the public, but also we've been taking it to places like the World Economic Forum in Davos and stuff. So we're really trying to, like you said, give this visceral and emotional understanding and response, as well as a kind of factual and intellectual understanding.
Yes, absolutely. And it's the need of the hour.
And yeah, we're all going to have to work together to do it, but it's through messages in various formats and including wildlife photography that we can really get us all on the same page with that.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's a great place for us to round off our discussion. Thank you so much, Aish. I've really enjoyed this. This has been a great chat.
Thank you so much, Khalil, and thank you to the entire team of Natural History Museum for having me on board, and I had a lovely time. Thank you.
You're absolutely welcome, and congratulations on your wonderful image in this year's exhibition.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And thank you at home as well for watching with us. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. Remember that entries to next year's Wildlife Photographer of the Year competition are still open, so you can head over to our website for more information. That's nhm.ac.uk. Please do join us again for more Nature Live shows as well, and keep an eye on our social channels for updates on our opening arrangements and tickets. You can find us on Facebook, Insta, Twitter, and YouTube, as well as, like I said, nhm.ac.uk. Until next time, that was Aishwarya Sridhar. I'm Khalil Thirlaway, and this has been Nature Live. Thanks and goodbye.